For the past 2 years plus, the people of Washington have been living under an constitutionally dubious regime, arrangement, state government. For too long, we have allowed an imbalance to exist in the normal balance that our state government operates on. The separation of powers is critically important, and that separation of powers between the branches of government is what's gotten bollocksed up. This has to do with people's rightful concern about emergencies, public health emergencies, and others. But it's led to a place where we are not delivering to the people of Washington good government, consistent government, coherent government, government in which they have a say. So how do we cure this problem? We cure this problem by putting clear and enforceable limits on the executive branch's emergency powers. What this striking amendment does is it strengthens the underlying bill considerably by using plain and clear language to put limits on the executive branch's ability to assume emergency powers by a declaration of emergency. We want to keep the mechanism of emergency powers in place. They are a good and necessary thing during times of crisis, but we want to avoid the bog that we've gotten caught up in, where these emergency powers can be exercised for years on end. So this striking amendment really takes the spirit of what the underlying bill is trying to do, and frankly, the underlying bill doesn't execute it very effectively and makes it much stronger. So I think it advances the same purpose as the underlying Senate bill, but gives it real teeth, gives it clear lines of delineation, and gives the people of the state a clear and understandable system of what happens when there's a declared emergency. This is good for the state, and it's good for the people of the state. Please vote yes. We appreciate the intent of this bill. It does try to put some limits on the emergency powers that our executive branch in this state can assume during a time of declared emergency, during a crisis. So we appreciate the spirit of the bill. However, we feel that it is not effective, that its description of a, roughly speaking, a 90-day limit on emergency powers is too soft, is frankly what some have called toothless. It doesn't really have a reliable, clearly stated limit or ability for the legislative branch to assume its proper and just co-equal position with the executive branch and exert real control over a declaration of emergency and use of emergency powers that go on for too long. So for that reason, we have issues with the underlying bill, with this bill we're considering. We need to be careful about how the awesome power of the state is used. The spirit of our existing body of law on emergency powers acknowledges that granting these extraordinary powers to one individual, to the governor during a time of crisis, is an exceptional situation and should not be used trivially or lightly or extended indefinitely. And we are greatly concerned that while the governor in the current situation, the COVID outbreaks, rightly focused on public health and frankly matters of life and death in the early stages of the COVID outbreaks, we are troubled by the muddying of the governor's justifications for continued use of these extraordinary powers in the years since, and greatly troubled that just lately this governor has shifted his explanation for the use of the awesome powers from public health and life and death to trying to get more money out of the federal government. That is a substantial change in the rationalization that he's offering for his use of these extraordinary powers. And it's because of this kind of pivot and this kind of confusing signals that the executive branch is sending to the people of Washington that we need more clarity in how the executive branch can use such extraordinary powers. By that measure, Mr. Chair, 5909 falls short. We would like to work with this bill. We would like to improve this bill, to strengthen it, to clarify it. We could even accept the 90-day limit, although that's longer than many people would like to see on the emergency powers, if they were clearly defined. And if we knew that that 90-day limit was a real enforceable limit. Mr. Chair, the legislative branch has got to step up. It's got to stand up and assume its co-equal position with the executive branch. And this bill doesn't let us do that as effectively as it should. So for that reason, Mr. Chair, at this point, we're going to vote no on this bill. We want to see more. We want to see clarity, and we want to see the legislature's rightful position as co-equal to, not subordinate to, the executive branch. Please vote no.